Everybody listen to We're Not Wizards, because we are the best, and we're not wizards, no matter what anybody says. Goodbye.
And welcome to another episode of We're Not Wizards. My name's Richard. I'll be your host for 2019. I'm gonna have to stop singing these because people are just gonna go, what are you singing for? So it's what we call a quick start on the Kickstarter episode. And a quick start on a Kickstarter episode is when somebody who is about to launch their Kickstarter, or has indeed launched their Kickstarter, comes on the show to talk to us. Now, sometimes we organise these things really, really quickly, and then sometimes it takes a little while for you to organise, and then you find out that the actual Kickstarter is going on Tuesday. So, I don't know. So, a gentleman by the name of James Van Niekerk got in contact with us last year and said, I'm going to be bringing my game to Kickstarter. And I said, what's it called? And he went, it's called Minions of Mordak. And I went, that sounds fantastic. So he went to kind of organise it on the show. And then he came back and says, actually, I ran into somebody else, and they're going to be helping me with the game. I was like, and the name's changed. So, as I say, joining me is James Van Niekerk. So, hello, James.
Hello. You nailed the pronunciation.
That's because I've written out phonetically.
Perfect.
I was really, really worried. You know, it's like, there's nothing worse than you sitting there going, yeah, just butcher my name once more. Butcher it. No, butcher my name again. Just do it.
I've heard it. Heard it butchered 1,000 ways. It's quite sad, but you nailed it.
Yeah, I like it very, 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 very much. The reason that we do these type of episodes is because basically we like to speak to people who are putting their projects out there. We have recently finished our own Kickstarter, so we know how all the fun and games involved in that type of business. So it's always a good idea to get people on to help them spread the word about their project. And the other reason is I'm quite nosy, and I like to speak to people, and I like to find out about their kind of story and their journey and stuff like that. So James, you want to, before we jump into the multiple names of your game, do you want to tell us just, a little bit about how you kind of got into the hobby in the first place?
Sure. I've been playing games forever, but aside from the normal gateway games, all the Monopolies and that I played with my siblings, there was a moment when my brother bought a used set of Epic 40,000 from a neighbor, but he didn't buy a rule book, so all we had was sort of this little Titan stat card for one of the Titans from that game. I don't know if you know Epic from Warhammer. Yeah. So anyways, we just kind of made up a game around that Titan stat card, and we all thought it was the coolest. And then we got into a bunch of different Games Workshop titles from there. Do you
still know how to play that kind of game? If we kind of
one we made up?
Yeah.
Well, you know what? When I say we made up rules, that's with a heavy quotation. We were young enough that it was really just kind of like rolling dice, and then somebody decided what happened.
It was like Calvin Ball from Calvin and Hobbes or something like that.
Exactly.
It's like, I've rolled a 6. That means everybody has to fight backwards. Okay.
That's exactly what it was.
That sounds kind of fantastic. Did you have? Have you got? Did you have a few games kind of growing up then, or did you get access to a lot of games, or was that kind of that kind of keep you going for a while?
No, we eventually got into Warhammer 40,000, so we played that a lot. I played a lot of Mordheim with my friends. And then we eventually in high school got into D&D and other RPG games.
What kind of RPG stuff were you playing then? Just whatever you could get your hands on?
Mostly D&D. We played a little bit of Vampire the Masquerade at one point. Yeah, and then I think we played Warhammer Roleplay a little bit, but it's mostly been D&D 3.5.
Was that wasn't the version that folk didn't like? That was still staying in the real kind of stats. That wasn't before they kind of turned to the dark side and made it all kind of complicated and stuff like that, isn't it?
Well, I think version 4 was the one that people kind of lashed back against.
Yeah.
And then they all were like, we're sticking with 3.5. And then the latest version, I think everybody has accepted.
Yeah. Did you stick with 3.5 then?
We have, mostly because we own all the books for it, so we've just never invested in updating them.
And what kind of character would you normally roll?
I roll Sorcerer usually.
All right, okay.
Usually I spend our sessions kind of like combing over my spells, being like, what would be funny in this given situation?
It's just like, we could use a spell to help break down that door that's keeping us from dying. Or I could make everybody's clothes float, you know?
Yes, exactly. Priorities, right?
Exactly. At that time, I mean, obviously... D&D itself kind of helps facilitate people using their kind of imagination and the beginning of their kind of design skills. So was that, with you kind of moving into D&D, were you kind of making up your own scenarios at kind of that time when you were playing that then?
You mean, was that sort of where I got into game design? Or?
Yeah.
Yeah, you could say that. I suppose what happened was... I made a Western campaign based on D&D systems. And then it was like a Wild West campaign that I had a few kind of modulated rules for. And then my friends had like such a good time with the role-playing of it, and they wrote these really fun characters that I wound up like working on a comic based on that campaign.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, and I worked on that comic for a couple of years, but kind of got burnt out on the idea of like making a comic book, because it is a huge amount of work as an artist.
Were you doing all the art yourself? Because I guess it should be mentioned at this time that you're kind of an artist as well as kind of like a kind of a games designer. So I mean, is the struggle with the comic book side of things is that you know exactly where you want it to go, but it's going to take kind of 12 pages for it to get from one place to another, and you've got to draw out kind of all those 10 to 12 pages kind of thing. Yeah,
there's a crazy amount of like skill that goes into just basically being efficient with how you tell a story in a comic, because you don't want to spend 12 panels on something that you could tell in one panel, so you're sort of budgeting art to story, and the more you can kind of tell a story with at the same time as showing what's happening, you sort of try and save that way. But I think what I realized after getting 25 pages into my comic, which wasn't very far, was that it was kind of a huge endeavor. Anyways, from there, I wanted a creative sort of side project, and I eventually landed on a board game because I had sort of done a few freelance board games, and I kind of knew it was a manageable amount of work.
Yeah.
Of course, then I ended up designing a board game that had over 100 different unique pieces of art in it and all these different things. So I didn't really go the easy route.
It's just like, you don't want to have all these 100 pieces of things kind of looking all the same. I mean, there's got to be a differentiator. And look at it this way, it's kind of like your first game. So you want to create a right impression. So if that means creating, obviously, if doing the amount of work that would have probably created you 2 comics.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
So that's cool. I mean, you sent me the kind of the pictures for kind of Valor and Villainy, Minions of Mordak. And did you do all of the art on this then?
I did. Crazy as it is, I've been working on it for 3 years, or over 3 years now. So it's been a long haul.
Is it Were you working by yourself? Was there anybody else you were kind of working beside as you were kind of creating it?
I have been doing all of the art and game design on my own, but I do have a core group of playtesters and some game developers that I've worked with along the way.
Okay.
And then lately now, with Skybound Games being involved, we've added a few other people to the roster who are working on it. We have someone who's sculpting miniatures for us, and someone who's helped us with video work and that sort of thing for the campaign.
Did you I'm just looking at this. Is this all? Do you work on a computer when you're doing this? Is some of this kind of like painted as well? Because it all looks. I take it, is it all digital stuff that you've done? Yeah.
Yeah, for the most part, I'll usually start with a sketch of some kind, but then eventually it makes it onto the computer. And this game uses a lot of 3D models and renders as part of the workflow.
Okay.
So then I'll take like a really preliminary 3D model, I'll do some renders of it with good lighting, and then I'll do what I call a paint over on top of that, which is basically just, you then have sort of an informed base for your painting that you then do on top of it.
Yeah. So it's almost like you take a 3D model, you see exactly how the lighting hits, and then you almost kind of use that in a 2D sense to then paint the model, so you still maintain the 3D aspects, but it looks kind of 2D.
Yeah, and it's really helped now that we're actually making miniatures for the game, because now there's these 3D bases for all the poses that my characters are in, and we've definitely kind of gotten a leg up on making miniatures out of that.
Is this what you do for a living? Are you an artist for a living then, James?
I am, yeah. I work at a place called Complex Games in Winnipeg in Canada.
Oh, right, okay.
And so we do mobile and PC games.
What kind of stuff do you do? Because this, I'm going to obviously put some links in the show notes so that everybody can see this artwork, but you've really got to see the stuff. You know, y'all should be jealous just now because the artwork that I'm staring at with these two old and tired eyes, because it's some really, really good stuff. I really, really like the kind of the vibe of it. I'm getting almost a slight Blizzard type feel with some of the art that's there. Yeah, just definitely just the way the kind of a solid kind of character models. I'm a bit of a connoisseur of the kind of the art stuff, so I appreciate the amount of work that goes into a kind of a good piece of art, because I do some art kind of myself, but this stuff is just
nice. This
stuff is really, really good. Did that with you doing the kind of the art yourself, were you kind of more self-critical of the pieces that you were putting out there? Did you have to be kind of more disciplined with yourself and say, look, this has to be finished. You have to press the save button, and then you have to save that file, and then it kind of has to be done. I mean, with you being an artist and with you kind of continually having the ability to be able to go in and tinker, did you have to show a bit of discipline to actually draw a line under a character once you'd finished it, so you didn't continually go back and go, kind of change things?
Yeah, you know what, I would usually kind of, for each of the characters, I'd have like a few steps that I go through, and I would sort of benchmark an amount of time that I have for those steps. And basically I wasn't timing myself, but basically when my evening ran up, I would be like, all right, let's call it done. I would show it to a few people, and if there was any feedback that I could work in, I would still do that. But I actually, in general, I haven't gone back and like reworked anybody from the game. All the sort of characters I've kind of just stuck to. Yeah.
Did that make it easier when you were kind of like playtesting and prototyping the game? That when people, because normally when people have been prototyping or getting people to play test games, usually the art is like a placeholder.
Right. Yeah.
Did it kind of make the game feel more real? I'm assuming that what you did is you produced all the kind of the art cards and everything like that when you were doing the kind of the preliminary kind of play testing, just to give people a proper feel of the game.
So it sort of happened back and forth. I would do a little bit of game design and then a little bit of artwork and then a little bit of game design. Because I didn't want to do artwork for anything that might not make it into the final game. But But once I kind of knew my cast of characters, I started just chipping away at them one character at a time. And so I did have temp art to begin with prototypes, but I've slowly kind of added my own artwork until all of it is my own. And so, yeah, I would say that like having the good artwork has like totally helped me fill tables with players whenever I bring it out. 'Cause it's just people kind of have something they can look at and get excited about. I would say even just like having a few characters done already kind of made a difference where people would see where I was going with it, even if it wasn't all up to a certain level.
Yeah. I mean, it reminds me a lot of Ravage, Dungeons of Plunder, which a friend of the show, Ian Schofield.
Yeah, I followed that project a lot. He's kind of doing a similar thing to me, Ian. He's an artist and a game designer as well.
Yeah. And that's what I'm kind of getting the same vibe. I think it's cool. And also, as I say, I appreciate if you put this amount of work into it. I know like churning out good art isn't just you don't just say, right, okay, I'm just going to put the kettle on, finish this art, and then by the time the kettle's boiled, the art will be finished, and then I can go and do something else. Because I'm looking at, say, the and this will all become apparent when everybody's like going, he's just trying to describe things that nobody else can actually see. What are you doing, you actual muppet? But basically, on the main picture of the game, you have all of the art card character cards kind of standing up at the back, and then there's a grid of about 5 by 5 kind of tiles. And if you maybe imagine, like, say something like SimCity, or I think Settlers, or any of those kind of original kind of computer games where you get kind of like tiny little kind of hamlets. If you look at the games, the kind of the real-time strategy games that you get on mobile phones and stuff like that, where you get kind of tiny units and tiny, the ones you got to press buttons and get gold. This is what I'm talking about, that you've got an entire kind of like set of tiles, which the artwork on that is equally kind of really, really kind of cool. I will make sure that there's a picture in the show notes, because otherwise folk are just going to go, he's flipped 2019 and he's gone, and he's just gone. We need him back. Where'd the idea for the game come from?
Yeah, so I guess earlier I mentioned I played a lot of different Games Workshop games. And as an artist, I do like to work in my spare time, but I've always sort of found that I'm not just someone who picks up a pencil and draws. Like, I need a goal, so I like to kind of make projects. And so basically I decided that making a game was something I wanted to do, and then I really love RPG games all around, and I kind of wanted to make one that... So I initially was inspired by Mordheim and some of the the RPG elements that game has. Yeah. But this game isn't about like a party of guys. You only get one guy. I really wanted to make an RPG game that gave you like a lot of level up satisfaction. So you weren't just like waiting for big level, like your character to level once or twice during the game. Your character levels like every turn to some degree, and you always get to kind of tinker with them. And I just kind of wanted that sense that like, oh, every turn I'm progressing, every turn I'm earning permanent level ups, and I'm also like picking up treasures and kind of capturing the things that I love about D&D into a one-time sit-down play session.
So, have you stripped anything out from the original vision that you had?
Yes, for sure.
I mean, obviously coming from a role-playing kind of background kind of thing, I bet you there was there was probably stats for everything.
That's a fun question to go back and talk about some of the things that didn't make it.
Yeah.
I mean, there was at one point, because in my game, you're either playing as the evil wizard trying to destroy the world, or you're playing as a band of heroes trying to stop that from happening.
Yeah.
And so originally I sort of had the evil wizard summons these minions, and there was a stat diplomacy the heroes could use to try and like turn them on to the hero side. So I kind of fought over so many versions to try and keep that as a hero stat, in addition to all the other combat stats the heroes could have. But it just like it was never smooth. It never was easily explainable to players, and I eventually cut it. Which was for the better.
Yeah, I think if you're playing used to kind of a normal D&D campaign, there's certain things that you can do. I mean, famously in my last D&D campaign, I managed to, through the power of charisma and animal husbandry, I managed to persuade an owlbear that they liked me. So I ended up with an owlbear following us about for a lot of the campaign. It obviously completely wrecked the balance of the rest of the campaign for what, for the rest that we played, because whenever we were in a pickle, I was just like, we just send in the owlbear, and it's like, you cannot send in the owlbear every time there is an issue, and it's like, why not? Owlbear gets stuff done, and that's how it happened. But I know, but yeah, what I mean. So you removed that. So I take it was the idea that people, instead of fighting the bad guys, they could go like, hey, and the bad guys would go, hey, and they go, hey, and they go, hey, and then they would just like follow you about and kind of fight along your side and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, what happened? So the monsters in Minions of Mordak, they have two sides, sort of a wounded and a fresh side. Mm-hmm. And when you deal them damage, if you deal them enough, you get to flip them over, and now they stay on their wounded side, and that's like how. And then they have a different life total on the second side.
Cool.
But that was sort of an idea that I arrived at later in development. I guess earlier on, the double-sided nature of the card was actually to indicate whose team they were fighting for.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, that was sort of where the diplomacy, like taking monsters back, kind of came into play. So you could kind of roll against their health, and if you beat them with your leadership stat, you would kind of flip them over, and now they would be on your team. But it just it was a messy thing in execution, and kind of added a lot to explain. A lot of fringe cases.
I don't think apart from D&D, I don't know if I've seen that in an actual game. As in, I think, in all the kind of the dungeon crawlers I've played, I don't think I've seen the option where you can actually say, well, can we be friendly to these people, or can we intimidate them, or can we kind of influence them to kind of fight on my side? It'd be uninteresting. Is it something you could bring in as kind of like maybe an expansion to the game?
Yeah, I've thought about it, and I've also thought about certain like charm creature spells and things like that let you take actions as the enemies, but not like permanently control them. So there's some of that, and I mean, the idea of the heroes getting companions is still in the game. So the ranger character has a horse who she can kind of summon onto the battlefield to run around and hoof people or pick up treasures for her and things like that.
Hoof people.
Oh yeah,
just a horse. You say that, and all I'm thinking about is Tangled, with a big,
That's exactly
just
it.
Walking up and just smashing people apart.
Well, I had a game where the horse was the MVP for sure.
Wow.
The ranger,
that'd be awesome.
The ranger kept whiffing their bow rolls, and then their horse would go and just like run up and hoof the thing, and it just like it just always worked. It was just fate of the dice, I guess.
I just like the fact that this kind of angry looking horse just going about, just getting stuff done. Do you know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
Kind of like Kung Fu Panda. I'm just anxious. Yeah. Come on, where are we going? Yeah. Taking out just everything and anybody. In terms of the gameplay, how do you play it? Because I think it looks hidden tiles. Well, it doesn't. It looks like you're doing some exploring. You lay out your 25 tiles, I'm guessing face down. You do a bit of exploration, you turn things over. So you're kind of it's a bit Heroquest, isn't it? Because I mean, the whole point of Heroquest is you knew what was kind of happening, whereas you knew what was happening if you were the dungeon master, but you didn't know what were happening if you were the heroes. You had to basically go on a kind of an explore tile and see what was kind of there and see what was kind of kicking about as well. Does the evil overlord, do they have access to see what should be on the tiles, or are they as in the dark as you are as a hero?
So the map holds its secrets and nobody gets to actually see them.
Oh, cool.
But like as the map gets flipped over, things are going to happen that will surprise both the wizard and the heroes. However, if monsters get revealed, because there's a lot of monsters hidden in the map, then they become the wizard's monsters to control.
All right.
And sometimes there's ambushes, so then the wizard gets to kind of interrupt the hero's turn and act with a monster right away that appears. So there's sort of some hidden wrenches that get thrown into their plans.
That's kind of cool. You mentioned, do they get to then... I mean, I take it you're talking about them kind of like building stats and building character. Do they get the ability to kind of act against these sudden surprise attacks and things like that as well then?
Yeah, there are some treasures in the game, because that's another aspect, is you find treasure and you can equip it. Each of your characters has sort of 3 slots that they can slide cards into. And there are some treasures that allow you to ignore the ambush effect when it comes up, and things like that.
Okay. So how do you actually play the game? Because I've asked, and then I've taken you down a tangent, and then I'm asking again.
Sure.
And I'll probably take you down a different tangent. But
so
how would you play around?
So you have action points that you spend throughout your turn, and you can move around with those. But then you also have these combat stats, and each of the heroes has 3 combat stats, and they're melee, ranged, and magic. So then on those stats, you have a row of dice, and the dice go from white to yellow to red, being worst, second best, best. And so white dice will be half the time 0s and half the time 1s, but red dice are always either a 1 or a 2. So basically, as you level up your dice, you have a higher threshold of numbers you can be hitting, but also your dice become more reliable and less likely to fail.
Okay.
So it's not like every die roll is a 50-50. There's a lot of times you go into a roll with a guaranteed success, or that you're just hoping for like a few successes to be able to hit a high number.
Okay.
So how it ends up happening is, say you've got 5 red dice on your melee and you're going to melee attack somebody, you would roll all those dice and total up the numbers, and they'll all be either 1s or 2s. And then your total you take and you compare to the health that the monster has. So monsters will have a top value for their total health and a bottom value for their wound value, and you have to meet one or the other, or you basically didn't make it. And the low level monsters will have like a 1 or a 2 for those values, but the highest level monsters might have 15.
Wow.
So at a certain point in the game, you start needing to combo with your allies in order to hit those high numbers, or get really good gear or spells that kind of help you roll higher. And so there's a good amount of teamwork involved, especially with higher player counts.
Okay. Was it difficult to balance so that people could play, a 2-player big game versus, say, like maybe a 4-player game? Did you have to take that into consideration to make sure that, people could go ahead and they could beat every encounter that they meet?
Yeah. There was a lot of playtesting that went into that for sure. And I have like a spreadsheet of game data that I've recorded on various player accounts to try and kind of catalog it all. But the main system that the game uses is, so XP amounts that you gain vary depending on player count. So that's one balancing measure I have. So if you're playing with 5 players, so every XP you earn is shared. There's no like selfish, I got the kill, so I get the XP for this guy. It's full cooperative for you and your teammates.
Okay.
But basically what happens is in a 5-player game, you might kill 10 monsters in a turn, say that would be a really big turn. But all those monsters are worth a value, and that all gets pooled up together. And then a chart just sort of tells you what the number of XP everybody earns this turn is. So I can kind of balance the number of monsters that players are tending to kill to the amount of XP that I kind of want players to be earning on a given turn, and balance things out that way.
Okay.
And then the game board itself also has player count specific icons on it that you kind of use only depending on whether you have 5 players sitting at the table or 2 players. So then in a 2-player game, I can make there be less monsters that appear so that the lone hero still stands a chance against the wizard.
So is that with the on the backs of the cards? I notice there's like 1s, 2s, and 3s. Is that what that comes down to?
On the backs of which cards? Sorry?
On the back of the tiles, the floor tiles. I notice that some of the symbols have got a 1, some of them have got a 2, and some of them have got a 3. Is that kind of denoting kind of like the player count?
Yeah, exactly.
Ah, cool. Okay, that's cool. Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of important. Kind of getting the balancing right. Surprisingly enough, the most recent place I seen a similar system in place was when we were playing Go Nuts for Donuts. Okay. And at the beginning of the game, you remove all of the cards which are not suitable for kind of like your player count. So you take your player count and you remove all the cards which are kind of like above that player count, and it's to kind of balance the game. Mm-hmm. But also make sure that it's, everybody has a fun time, and it's also easy to kind of keep playing. There's obviously a big difference between Ice Donuts and collecting treasure from the Eye of Zurg, but it's just one of these things. You mentioned when we're talking about the art, you mentioned talking about obviously the miniature side of things. That creeps into kind of costs for the games. Did the miniature side of things, was that always something that was on the back burner, or did that really kind of come into its place when kind of Skybound kind of got involved?
Yeah, when I was thinking about self-publishing, I just sort of decided that I wouldn't do miniatures on the grounds of it was my first project and I wanted to play it safe. Mm-hmm. But I would have always loved miniatures. The game is really kind of perfect for them. So then when I ended up showing it to Skybound, they were just really excited about the idea of doing them. So their plan right now is that the game going to retail will have standees.
All right.
But the deluxe version on Kickstarter will have all the miniatures, and they're really cool. As a longtime Warhammer fan, it's kind of like a childhood dream that I would have a miniature made of my characters. So it's so much fun to see them getting created.
That must be really cool, though. It must be like you're showing people. I mean, obviously, you take kind of like any excuse to show somebody. So if you're at the store picking up a quart of milk or something like that, and you're just saying, I think I've got exact change in my jacket. Just give me, and you start rummaging around your pockets. So you put your keys down in the cart, and you end up putting a couple of miniatures. And you go, oh, sorry, those are. Oh, I'm so embarrassed because those are from my game. Do you want to have a closer look?
That's exactly.
kind of thing. Oh, sorry, officer. Yes, I've got my license and registration here somewhere, but would you like to...
I was going to set these miniatures aside to grab it first.
Yes, doctor, I can certainly give you her medication. It's in... Oh, no, that's not the jar that contains medication. That's the jar that contains these fabulous miniatures from my game. And, you could just kill that joke, which I already have. How did you get talking to Skybound? I mean, I know Skybound through the Chuck Norris of board gaming, Mr. James Hudson, who obviously Druid City Games, and then he moved over to Skybound, and obviously still, working with kind of Druid City. But how did you kind of get involved? I mean, were you actively looking for a publisher, or was it just one of these things that happened?
It was definitely one of these things. So I went to Gen Con of last summer, and I was planning at that time to self-publish and launch Kickstarter in October. So I was just sort of there to build hype. And I guess as I was there and I was walking around the floor and observing everything going on, it dawned on me what it meant. Like after all the work I'd put in doing the game design and the artwork, and I knew Kickstarter was going to be a big challenge, but then it was like, even if I have a successful Kickstarter, the future of what happens after that was just sort of overwhelming to me, because it meant, now I have a small business. Now I'm going to conventions to sell all the games I've produced. And I kind of just was trying to be realistic about what I'm capable of all on my own. So then I would have been more proactive about setting up meetings with publishers if I had sort of planned to do this, but I hadn't done that, and I just was like, you know what? I'm here, and so are all the other publishers in the industry, so I'm going to pitch a few.
Yeah.
And I had made a bunch of different prototypes with the intent to kind of give them to reviewers and stuff like that. So I had them with me. And then James Hudson was a big personality on the internet I was aware of, and I really loved what he did with Grim Forest and his other games. So I approached him first, and he was really excited about it. And I actually ended up not approaching any other publishers, really. We just had really good conversations, and we play tested the game together over that weekend, and things moved forward from there.
Yeah. I guess it's one of those things. It's like if you're going to pitch to anybody, if you pitch to James Hudson, you don't really worry about kind of anybody else, especially if they like the game. Because Guardian's Call, one of the ones that they did, that's coming out to fulfillment. I think it's either on its way or it's going to be kind of like in the next couple of weeks. And the presentation of their game so far has been very, very strong. I think the next one I'm looking out for was it Wonderland War?
That one's coming in March, I think, or May maybe. But that's coming up. That looks great too. And Tidal Blades just landed. That was a big one.
Yeah. Do you get a chance, because you're working with them now? Do you get a chance to kind of see these games kind of in the flesh, in the cardboard, I suppose would be a better phrase? But have you had a chance to kind of look at things like Wonderland War or, Tidal Blades? Have you seen them yourself?
Well, in so much as I am working with them, they're in California and I'm in Canada, so there's a bit of a gap distance between us. So no, I haven't
just a bus
actually.
trip, is it?
No, but I have been enthusiastically watching all their posts about all their games. But that's probably the stuff that you've seen as well.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. When you hand it over, because obviously you've been working on this for some time. Mm-hmm. Did they come back with kind of like feedback with any changes that they suggested they wanted to make?
Well, I guess when I approached them, I had already hired Waitress Games, so like J.R. Honeycutt and Brian Neff. They had done game development with me on the title, and so we had done a round of like back and forth iterations. I think they worked out a lot of the kinks of the game already at that point. So by the time Skybound saw it, it was pretty polished, and they agreed that there wasn't actually that much that they wanted to change. So we've made some adjustments, especially to like the presentation of the components, and they've made improvements to the quality and the size of some of the pieces, but the gameplay has stayed more or less how it was when I approached them.
And has your approach with regards to Kickstarter, are you just kind of letting them take the lead on Kickstarter about kind of what the suggestions should be for, like, I mean, the funding target would have been a financial discussion, but things like stretch goals and things like that. I mean, normally what happens in a stretch goals is that you have a kind of a plan of attack, and then it's a case of, we'll get the artist kind of involved. Have you basically said, have you said to them, I'd like to continue to do the art on the rest of the project, if kind of possible? Yeah.
So they have, I guess I can't say any of the details of what we've worked out, but we're basically partnering this campaign.
Just whisper it to me, James. No deal.
We're partners, though. So we're both invested and we're both excited about this. And so I'm working on the artwork and for the campaign and the campaign page, and they are as well. So they've got a video guy who's doing a lot of the Kickstarter video and that sort of thing. They have a miniature sculptor, and we're working together on putting together all the graphics for the page. But I'm totally deferring to their expertise when it comes to the funding goal and all the stretch goals. Mm-hmm. What it did happen, though, is when we kind of started working together, they asked me sort of, what are some of the things you were planning for your stretch goals, or any ideas that you have that might be cool? And we kind of brainstormed a little bit, and we came up with most of the stretch goals that we have planned now in that sort of conversation.
Are you kind of going for aesthetic stretch goals, or are you going for gameplay? Oh, you can't answer. But, okay. Are you... are you looking... Have you looked at both kind of things? Are you trying to look with kind of like more of an aesthetic kind of increase in the quality of the components?
I can say there's both, for sure. Yeah. There are new playable pieces that will be added to the game as a result of stretch goals. But then there's also just like experiential quality upgrades that will be made that will just make it much nicer.
Yeah. Because I think it's getting that balance, because I know that there's been campaigns that have come under fire from Kickstarter backers to say, well, it looks to me like you've just carved a chunk off this game so you can kind of have it as a stretch goal or as an expansion to the game or something like that. And I think because of the money side of things, a lot of first-time creators have a tendency to go towards the quality of life improvements as opposed to kind of extra factions and extra characters and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, we've tried to kind of gravitate towards those stretch goals that people will be most excited about. So there has to be a visual component to that, but also the things that you can play with are a huge value add for people. So that's something we focused on also as well.
In terms of the kind of the noise creation, with Skybound having the kind of the reputation, and obviously James having the reputation behind him as well, has that taken the pressure off a bit in terms of the kind of the noise creation side of things? Have you been able to say, well, okay, I obviously you're speaking to me kind of just now, but has that meant that you've been able to, again, to kind of take their guidance and almost use a lot of their previous success to kind of help spread the word on kind of Valor and Villainy? Yeah,
it's absolutely given me a huge head start on spreading the word and marketing and all that. Their work on that has been like so helpful, and it's really allowed me to kind of focus on creating this stretch goal content that is going to be really exciting for people. So I'm even just now working on the ideas that we are hoping to add to the game throughout the campaign. So with promotion, you never quite know when you've done enough. So I'm still sort of mindful of where I could be posting or where I could be talking about the game with people or running it with people. I'm still trying to do what I can.
Yeah, it's a difficult one because you don't know. You never know if you're reaching the right people or if you're reaching out to the people too often or maybe too little. And then it's the whole kind of, when you're going through the campaign, it's like, do I update now? Do I update later? Is this important enough to update? Is this not important enough to kind of update? Kind of thing. That's all that kind of thing that I kind of, as I say, I've been on the other side of the curtain, and I only have complete respect for anybody that undergoes this madness that is the Kickstarter campaign. In terms of you personally, with Skybound getting involved in kind of the arts, with different kind of games and obviously different designers and stuff like that, has the art kind of thing question been raised about maybe you actually doing art for them as well? Or is that something you've got to be kind of careful of considering your day job?
Well, I can't really say exactly, but we're enjoying working together on this, and we'll see. I think
that's not a no.
It's not a no. It's not a yes.
That's a Justin Trudeau answer.
I do work freelance in addition to my day job, except for right now when I'm doing a Kickstarter campaign.
Exactly.
But in the future, who knows? We've been really enjoying working together on this project, Skybound and James Hudson and I.
I mean, on the flip side, have you not thought about going back to your bosses and saying, guys, I know we're all mobile and gaming, but we should bring some cardboard to the table as well. Is that
it's really just not where the focus of the company I work for is. So it would be kind of just a big side tangent. And it's kind of nice to have a project that like to have my work that I'm really excited about as my day job, but also to come home and kind of be able to unplug and put my efforts into something that's different. I think healthy.
Yeah, no, and I mean it certainly looks kind of impressive. Anything that is kind of like has good art, has a kind of a slight kind of Heroquesty vibe for it. I'm a bit of a sucker for it. I'm kind of an all over it kind of thing. So it certainly looks kind of appealing to myself. In terms of it being out there, it's going to be out. It's going to be out this week. It's going to be out the 22nd.
In 2 days. As of our recording.
What's the price on entry? How much does it cost to get yourself to pledge for this little beauty?
Yeah, it's going to be $39 for the retail version, and then $59 for the deluxe version.
And that's US dollars. That's not Canadian dollars.
Yes, that's right.
I've just thought I'd check.
I'm just actually going to double check that I didn't say the wrong. Yes,
I know. I just thought I'd double check. Because it's like because I speak to I speak to Eldra Games, Aaron at Eldra Games quite a bit, and he's in Canada as well. So whenever he's talking money, it's always about Canadian dollars, which is always fantastic because it always means it's a lot cheaper than you thought.
Yeah. It was going to be Canadian dollar.
Once you did the conversion rate, I'm like, yes, it's $105 Canadian dollars. That means it's £25 in the UK. Now that's not true. That's an over exaggeration, but it certainly makes my bank manager feel a lot better.
In Canada, we're just lugging wheelbarrows of money to the store to get our milk and bread.
And at the same time going, let me just, have you seen this? This is a miniature from my game.
yeah, that's right.
that I'm making as well as all. I use it as a paperweight for all the money I'm about to pay you for this kind of milk.
Yeah.
It's exciting times though, because as I say, you've gone from being in a situation where you were self-publishing to going in partnership in Kickstarter with one of the kind of more exciting kind of game companies out there at the moment. They seem to be kind of hitting it out of the park. Have you already got, is baby number 2 kind of gestating in a notepad near you then?
I'm really hoping that if Valor and Villainy goes well, that the next game would be an expansion. And I have a lot of cool ideas for what that would be.
Awesome. What about other games as well? I mean, have you thought about have you got a little miniature skirmish game, yourself? Is that on the cards or anything like that?
I just woke up in the night with an idea that I jotted on a piece of paper the other day. It was basically a world where the robots have fully taken over and they've outlawed cars, except for that there's this band of car mechanics who are disgruntled now that they've lost their jobs and they're going on a joyride smashing robots.
That sounds amazing. You have to make that kind of happen. That's definitely a game. I always wake up with the same message written on a piece of paper, which is, "You're a fraud." That's all I get all the time. It's just about, that's what ran through the Kickstarter campaign. It's like, this is actually happening and it's a thing. In terms of, okay, I've got a final question for you. Okay. Well, obviously, the campaign's going to be running, is it going to be running for is it usual 30 days or is it going to be like a kind of a 20-day special?
24 days. So it's in between.
24.
So it's running from the 22nd of January to the 15th of February.
So in other words, what you're saying is potentially if your husband, wife, partner, other half really loves you, they're going to get you Valor and Villainy for a Valentine's present. That's what they'll get you for the...
Oh, yeah.
It's the love. You have to have a level called the love pledge.
Oh yeah, so that everybody can get it for their significant others.
Yeah, exactly. Get them something that they love, and you'll have like a little special love spell in it. Make it happen, James. You're an artist. Couple of hearts, couple of spells. Do you know what I mean? Makes it. That's your charm spell for making the enemies kind of work with you. Make your enemies instantly fall in love with you. There you go. Write that down.
The love potion.
The love potion, there you go, special for Valentine's Day, and it'll get unlocked as the last stretch goal, There you go.
I feel like Valentine and Villainy or something. There's got to be a way I can work
definitely has to be. That has to be the title. Promise me you'll make me that a title as one of the updates on Kickstarter. Even if you don't mention me ever again in your life, make that. Just make
I'll
that. Make that happen. Thank you. Thank you very, very, very much. If this, if this becomes something that you're going to move into kind of on a full-time basis, and say Skybound sit you down and say, James, we're really impressed with everything that you've done, that we are going to give you the keys to the cardboard vault. So they take you downstairs, and in the cardboard vault there's any games that you could ever want, first editions, second editions, new games, old games, and they said, James, pick 3 games and they're yours. Okay, what 3 games would you pick if you could have any games at all?
Whoa. Okay. Well, Heroquest and all its expansions.
Yeah,
because
obviously.
It's basically a rare collector's item that's amazing.
Yeah.
I would pick the original, very first printing of Dungeons and Dragons and all those handbooks.
Oh, wow. Okay, cool.
Because their artwork is super fun. I don't know if you've ever had a chance to see it.
I have not, but I will check it. I'll definitely check it out.
It's a very, old school art style. It's black and white kind of pen and ink stuff, but it's really fun. And what would my last choice be?
Third one's a doozy.
Yeah. Well,
any game at all.
Probably Mansions of Madness, because I've played it a few times now and it's amazing, but I don't have it yet.
That's fair. That's a good call. That's fair enough. That's fair enough. Yeah, and I hope Skybound open the cardboard safe and they give you, give you those games. That'd be nice. If people want to keep an eye on you on the internet webs, where do you exist on the internet webs?
Well, I'm on Twitter as at Valor in Villainy. So that's Valor, letter N, Villainy. And then I'm on Facebook. I have Valor and Villaini's page on Facebook. And you can also find me on Board Game Geek to follow my creations. Yeah.
Cool.
And then minionsofmordak.com or valorandvillainy.com will both take you to the webpage that gives you all the information about the game.
And what I'll do is obviously we'll get the Kickstarter link from you as well.
Sure, yeah.
And we'll make sure that goes into the show notes so that we have notes to show. Thank you very, very much for coming on, sir. This has been,
thank you for having me.
This has been a pleasure. For people who are interested in keeping an eye on what we're up to, go to the internet webs, search for We're Not Wizards. You'll find us on Twitter and Facebook. We've got our website, which is we'renotwizards.com, and our blog, which is we'renotwizards.blogspot.com. You can find us on Instagram at We're Not Wizards. You can email us, magic at We're Not Wizards. I am aware of the irony of the address. That's why I chose it. You can find us on all the podcast catchers, your Stitchers, your Spreakers, your Acasts, and everything like that. I was going to make a joke and say if you missed the Kickstarter campaign for ourselves, then late pledges are open. It's like, don't be silly, I'm just already embarrassed myself about it. I'm not going to embarrass myself anymore. But if you have liked what you've listened to tonight, there's 2 things you can do. The first thing is tell somebody, say, what are you doing? I was listening to a podcast last night. Is it good? Lie to them and say it is. And then force them to listen to it, send it to people, I don't know, things stuff. You know, or the other thing you can do is if you jump onto Apple Podcasts, you can drop us a subscription. If you jump onto even further into Apple Podcasts, you can drop us a rating or a review. And as we say, if you are going to be giving us a rating or a review, then don't give us 10 stars because it makes us big-headed. But don't give us 1 star because it makes us cry. Give us something in the middle, like a 5, because it's average. And we're just a little bit average. But the person who's not been average tonight is the rather wonderful, the rather fantastic James Van Niekerk, who is going to be, as I say, Valor and Villainy, Minions of Mordak will be out by the time you're listening to that. Check out the show notes, click on the link, have a quick look. $39 for the normal base version, $59 for the deluxe version. Have a sniff, have a look at the art because it looks and tastes wonderful. There is only 2 more things to do. The first thing is to remember that we're many things, but we're not wizards. Are we wizards, James?
We are not wizards, unless you're playing as the evil wizard.
I don't ruin it.
We're not wizards. We are not wizards.
It's okay. It's okay. It's not like you're just handing your sound file over to somebody who's going to edit you. And the second thing is to say goodbye. So it's a goodbye from James. Say goodbye, James.
Goodbye, everybody. And thank you for having me on, Richard.
It's been an absolute pleasure. And it's a goodbye from me. Remember, stay safe. Roll6s.com. And if you're in the market for something that has got some stunning artwork that looks very, very entertaining and fun to play and involves you going about with potential love potions depending on the stretch goals getting unlocked, then check it out. But until the next time, goodbye.
Goodbye.
A wizard is never late. Nor is he early. He arrives precisely when he means to.